The wind howled through the broken city, carrying dust and silence. Nothing moved among the ruins, just shadows, crumbled stone, and long-dead memories. But Mason kept walking, his boots crunching over broken metal and glass. He was the last human in this zone, sent to scan for energy signals and lost tech, just another boring mission. Until he heard a faint sound. It wasn't an alarm, not a machine. It was a whisper, soft, cracked, like someone trying to cry but too weak to do. He stopped, hand moving to his sidearm. "Who's there?" he called, voice calm but alert. No answer, just the wind again. Then, behind a pile of scorched rubble, something shifted. A faint glow appeared, dim blue, like moonlight trapped inside a shell. Mason climbed over the broken blocks and dropped to one knee. And there she was, an alien girl, barely conscious, kneeling in the dust. Her skin shimmered like liquid metal, but it was covered in dirt and scratches. Her hair was short and tangled, and her long ears twitched at every sound. She was shaking, not from fear, but exhaustion. She looked up at Mason with wide silver eyes, eyes that didn't beg for help. They begged for mercy. He slowly lowered his weapon. "It's okay," he said gently. "I'm not going to hurt you." She blinked once. Then, suddenly, she fell to her knees and grabbed his wrist with both hands. Her voice was broken and soft. "Don't leave, please." Mason froze, not just because of her words, but because the ground beneath them vibrated. Not a quake, not a tremor. It felt like the earth was reacting to her voice. Then her body glowed brighter, and her hand burned hot against his wrist. He yanked his hand back instinctively, but she didn't move. She just bowed her head and muttered something in a language his translator couldn't understand. Suddenly, the small device on his wrist blinked. Red energy spike detected. Mason looked down. The scanner was going wild, but there was nothing nearby. No machines, no reactors. Just this girl. He tapped his earpiece. "Command, this is Scout Mason. I found something, someone. Unknown species. Possibly injured." Static replied, then silence, no connection. "Great." He looked back at her. "Can you stand?" he asked. Slowly reaching toward her, she flinched, then nodded weakly. But as he helped her up, he noticed something strange. The symbols on the ruined wall behind her began glowing. Ancient alien runes, long dead, now shining softly like fireflies. Mason's heart pounded. This wasn't just any alien girl. There was something powerful about her. "Who are you?" he whispered. She looked up at him with tears in her eyes and replied in a single word, "Valaya." It wasn't just a name. It sounded heavy, like it carried history as soon as she spoke it. The wind around them stopped completely. Dead. Silence. Mason knew then this girl was not just another refugee. She was connected to something old, something hidden beneath the ruins, and whatever it was waking up. He gently wrapped his jacket around her shoulders and helped her walk. "We need to get you out of here," he said softly, but deep inside, he knew she wasn't just a survivor. She was the beginning of something big, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Mason carried the alien girl Velia through the ruined streets. She was light, like a feather. But her body gave off a strange warmth. Her skin glowed faintly, not enough to light the path, but just enough to make the shadows dance around them. They reached Mason's temporary shelter, an old military outpost built into the rocks. It had thick walls, solar shields, a backup generator, and just enough supplies for one person. But now, there were two. He laid her gently on the small cot. She didn't resist, just closed her eyes and whispered something again in her alien tongue. The translator still didn't catch it, but Mason didn't push her. He turned on the small med drone, and it hovered over her, scanning her body. The screen flashed. Unidentified species. Genetic markers unknown. body temperature unstable. But then something else appeared. Energy source internal. Warning, potential overload. Mason frowned. "What the hell are you?" he whispered, staring at her glowing fingers. Valaya opened her eyes slowly. "I'm not supposed to be here," she whispered in broken English, surprising him. "You speak human standard." "A little," she said, voice shaking. "They never wanted me to learn." "Who?" Mason asked, sitting beside her, but she didn't answer, just turned her head toward the wall. Suddenly, the light bulbs flickered. The Medrone twitched in midair and dropped to the floor. The backup generator hummed louder, and then, boom, a spark shot out and the lights died. Darkness filled the room, but Valaya's body still glowed faintly. She gasped and curled into a ball, her breath becoming quick and shallow. "I can't stop it," she cried. "I'm sorry." Mason reached out, not sure what to do. "Stop what?" "The surge," she said, barely able to speak. Then the walls started humming. The old tech around them lit up. Screens that hadn't worked in decades began flashing ancient codes. His comms unit sparked and buzzed, repeating one word over and over in a voice not human. "She returns. She returns." Mason backed up, heart racing. Valaya's body lifted slightly off the bed, not floating, but being pulled by some invisible force toward the metal wall behind her. He rushed forward and grabbed her hand. "No, stay with me," he shouted the moment his skin touched hers. The hum stopped. Everything turned quiet. The lights went off again, and Valaya collapsed back onto the cot. Unconscious but breathing steady, Mason sat on the floor, sweating what had just happened. Outside, clouds swirled above the ruins, forming a spiral over the outpost. Far in the distance, a hidden satellite picked up the storm and sent a silent alert to a forgotten AI system deep in space. Back inside, Mason checked on her again. "Valaya," he whispered, "I think you're triggering machines. You're connected to something bigger." She didn't respond, so he stepped outside for air. But as he looked out at the ruins, his eye caught something, a giant metal slab half buried in stone. Glowing with the same blue light as Valaya's skin, he grabbed his scanner and ran toward it. The moment he stepped near, the scanner shut down, just like before. But the slab reacted. It lifted a few inches and revealed a hidden chamber beneath. Mason peered inside, but didn't go further. He returned to Valaya, who had just woken up. Her eyes locked with his. "You found it, didn't you?" she asked, voice clearer now. "The chamber. The machine." Mason nodded. "What is it?" She sat up slowly. "That's why I was hiding here," she said, tears forming in her eyes. "They left me behind, hoping the machine would never wake. But I felt it calling to me." "Who left you?" he asked again. She looked at him, her voice low and haunted. "My own people. They were afraid of what I was becoming." Mason took a deep breath. He wasn't a hero, not a soldier, not anymore, but something told him this girl had been sent to him for a reason. "You're safe here," he told her. But outside, something was coming, and the storm over the ruins kept growing stronger. Valaya sat on the edge of the cot, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her silver eyes looked at the metal floor, as if it held secrets she didn't want to speak. Mason sat across from her, arms resting on his knees, watching her closely. He had seen many things as a scout, but this girl, she wasn't just another alien survivor. She was different, ancient almost, and now he needed answers before the world outside caught up to them. Valaya finally spoke, voice low. "I was born in silence. Hidden under the ground, my kind what? Remains of them are not allowed to speak our names, not allowed to walk freely." Mason tilted his head. "Why? What did you do?" She looked at him, her face pale, but her eyes shining. "It's not what I did, it's what I am." She stood and stepped toward the glowing wall. "I'm from a bloodline that was erased from the records we were born with. A connection to machines, living machines made from stars. My ancestors could control them, speak to them, even wake them. Mason frowned. You mean those ancient star-forged ships? The ones nobody can activate. She nodded. My people feared that power. They called us the Triggered. Some said we were blessed. Others said we were cursed. Valaya turned to him. When I was a child, my own mother begged the elders to seal my powers. But it was too late. I touched a relic once, and it bloomed. Mason asked, eyebrows raised. Yes, she whispered. It came alive, wrapped itself around me like a cocoon. It showed me visions of stars, of war, of death. She gripped the wall, her body trembling. That's when they locked me away. They said I would bring back the machines, and with them, the war. Mason stood slowly. But you didn't ask for this. They can't blame you for being born. She smiled sadly. I was the last of the Triggered, and they thought if they abandoned me in this dead city, I would fade away with the ruins. Mason clenched his fists. That explained the glow, the power surges. The old machines responding to her breath. She wasn't just connected to the machines. She was their key, Valaya, he said carefully. That buried chamber I found, it was waiting for you, wasn't it? She nodded. It holds a weapon, one of the last star-forged guardians. They were built to protect entire worlds, but when their masters died, they fell asleep. She stepped closer to him. I came to shut it down forever, but I was too late. The moment I landed, it sensed me and began to wake. Mason took a deep breath. So what happens now? Before she could answer, the walls around them shook slightly. Then came a sound like a distant chimicking through the ruins outside. Belia's face turned pale. They found me. Mason grabbed his weapon and looked at the security feed. Dark shapes moved through the dust, small, fast, cloaked. Not human, not friendly. Who are they? He asked. Hunters, Valaya said, her voice shaking. They were created to erase my kind. And they don't care who gets in their way. Mason's hand tightened on his weapon. They'll have to go through me first. Valaya stared at him in surprise. No one's ever said that before. Well, Mason shrugged. I'm human. She smiled for the first time, just a little. A small warmth in her otherwise heavy expression. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small crystal. It pulsed with blue light. This is the core link. If I touch this to the machine in the chamber, it will either obey me or destroy everything. Mason looked at the crystal, then at her. Are you willing to take that risk? She looked down. I don't want war, but if I run again, someone else will find it, and they won't hesitate to use it. He nodded. Then we face this together. As the wind outside grew stronger and the shadows of hunters drew closer, Valaya and Mason prepared for what was coming. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and alone, but together. They were something the galaxy hadn't seen in centuries, a triggered royal. And a fearless human by her side, and the forbidden bloodline was no longer hidden. It had returned. The sky over the ruined city turned a dark, heavy gray. Storm clouds gathered like watchers in the heavens, silent but watching. Lightning flashed without thunder, strange and unnatural. Mason stood at the door of the outpost. Rifle ready, his heart was calm, but his eyes scanned every shadow beyond the perimeter fence. He wasn't just defending a shelter now. He was standing between Valaya and an ancient nightmare that had finally come knocking. Valaya stood behind him, clutching the glowing crystal in both hands. Her body trembled not from fear, but from the energy building inside her. I feel them, she whispered. They're not far. 20, maybe 30 of them. Mason turned slightly. You sure? They were made to hunt my kind, she said softly. They carry our scent. In their minds, a sudden high-pitched shriek echoed through the broken buildings, then silence. Again, Mason flinched, gripping his rifle tighter. That doesn't sound like any bounty hunter I've ever heard. "They're not hunters like you think," Valaya said, her voice steady now. "They're biomachines created during the TO. During the old war, fast, cruel, intelligent, and loyal to whoever gives them a reason to kill." Mason checked the scanner. Nothing showed up. "They're cloaked," he muttered. "That's why the radar's blind." A moment later, something dashed past the entrance too fast to see, but enough to make dust rise. Then another from the other side. Mason didn't fire. He waited, thinking like a soldier. They were testing him, watching his reaction. Planning their strike, inside, Valaya walked to the center of the outpost. She placed the glowing crystal on the ground and knelt beside it. Her fingers danced over it in circular motions. And suddenly, the lights flickered unknownly, briefly but long enough to activate something beneath the floor. A deep hum rolled through the walls. Metal plates shifted under their feet, revealing an ancient mechanism that had been asleep for centuries. "What are you doing?" Mason asked, eyes still outside. "I'm calling the Guardian," she replied. "If I die, this will still activate must." Suddenly, a screech tore through the air, sharp and metallic. Then a shadow leaped toward the door. Mason fired. Once, twice, the creature hit the ground hard, its cloak sparking and failing, revealing a twisted thing made of steel and bone. Its eyes were hollow, its arms long and sharp like knives, but worse. It didn't die, it just stood up again. Slowly, like it didn't even feel pain, back inside. Valaya shouted, pulling Mason just as two more leaped from above. He fired again, hitting one midair, but the second landed on the roof, claws digging in. Trying to break through, the outpost shook as the roof groaned under the creature's weight. Sparks fell from the ceiling, and Valaya screamed not in fear, but in connection. "I can feel them there trying to disrupt the core," she cried, holding her head. "They want to overload me." Mason rushed to her side. "Then we hold them off. Just tell me what to do." Valaya looked at him with eyes full of light. "You trust me? I've come this far, haven't I?" he said with a tight smile. Another loud crash, one of the side walls dented inward. The machines were closing in. Valaya took a deep breath and pressed both hands on the floor. "I can activate the machine early, but it will take everything I have. What happens to you?" "I don't know," she whispered, "but I'd rather die choosing than live in a cage." Mason turned, firing again as another hunter leaped into view. This one had wingstorn. Rusted wings that hissed steam with every flap. It dodged his fire, rushing him with a high-pitched screech. Then suddenly, boom, the ground under the outpost exploded upward, throwing both of them across the room. In the center of the chamber, something rose. A giant arm of polished alien metal, etched with glowing symbols. It moved like a living thing. Ancient but powerful, the Guardian had awoken. Valaya coughed, crawling toward Mason, her skin now glowing brighter than ever, her veins filled with light. The Guardian scanned the room, its single eye locking on her, then on Mason. It did not attack. Instead, it knelt. Mason blinked, stunned. "Is it?" Bowing, Valaya smiled weakly. "No. It's recognizing us." Outside, the hunters screamed again, but this time, the Guardian answered. It unleashed a beam of energy so bright that the entire sky above the ruins lit up like day. The hunters burned where they stood, instantly erased from existence. The storm stopped, the wind died, and silence fell again. Valaya dropped to her knees. Exhausted, but alive, Mason rushed to catch her before she fell completely. "You did it," he said softly. "You woke it." She looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. "They'll come again. Stronger next time, then we'll be ready," Mason said, holding her close, together. The ruins lay in silence now, covered in ash and glowing embers. The Guardian machine, tall, silver, and beautiful, stood like a statue above the Singio. Above the Shattered outpost, its eye pulsed softly, scanning the horizon, watching for more threats. Inside the broken building, Mason sat beside Valaya. Her head rested on his shoulder, her breathing steady but shallow. She hadn't spoken in hours. Her body drained after awakening the ancient star-forged guardian. He gently touched her wrist, where blue veins of light still glowed. She didn't move, but she was alive, barely. The guardian had spared them both, and now Mason understood why. Valaya was no ordinary alien. She wasn't just the last of her kind. She was the key aunt. Now the machine recognized her as its master. But what shocked Mason more was how the guardian had looked at him, like it knew him too. Like it had been waiting not just for her, but for both of them. A soft hum filled the air again. Valaya's eyes fluttered open. She blinked at the ceiling, then slowly turned her head toward Mason. "You stayed," she whispered, her voice weak. He smiled. "Of course I stayed. Did you think I'd just run after all that?" "I wasn't sure," she said quietly. "Everyone else did." Mason sighed, brushing dirt off her cheek. "I'm not everyone else." She sat up slowly, wincing. Her body felt heavy. Her arms tingled with leftover energy. But inside, something had changed. She wasn't afraid anymore. Mason looked at the guardian through the shattered wall. "It bowed to you," he said. "But then it looked at me, too. Like it remembered me." Valaya nodded slowly. "The machines were made by my ancestors, yes. But they were programmed to respond to those who showed compassion." Mason blinked. Confused compassion. "Yes," she said. "The ancient creators believed power should serve not only the strong, but also the kind. Machines were told to protect those who protect others." She looked at him with soft eyes. "And you? You protected me when I was nothing but a lost girl in the dirt." Mason stood up, stretching his sore legs. "Well, I figured if you could control ancient war machines, you were worth saving," he said jokingly. But deep down, he knew it wasn't just about her powers. It was the way she had knelt in front of him, trusting him without reason. That moment had changed everything. Valaya stood as well. Though shaky on her feet, "Something else is happening," she said, walking to the glowing crystal on the floor. "It's growing stronger. The signal is spreading." Mason checked his wrist scanner. And sure enough, multiple energy spikes were appearing across the map. Some small, some massive, other guardians. He asked, "Possibly," she said. "Or were others trying to control them?" Mason stepped forward. "Then we need to move." "Where?" He looked at her, and then at the guardian. "Wherever you go, I go," he said. "And wherever you're needed, we go together." Valaya paused, then reached for the glowing core crystal. The moment her fingers touched it, a surge of light shot through her body. But she didn't collapse this time. She absorbed it. The light wrapped around her. Arms like armor, her eyes lit up, her hair floated slightly, as if touched by invisible winds. Mason stared in awe. "You're transforming," he whispered. She turned to face him. "I'm not just Valaya anymore," she said. "I am the last of the royal bloodline, the last controller of the star-forged guardians. But I will not be a queen. Then what will you be?" Her voice was calm and clear now. "I will be a protector for all who have no voice. And you, Mason? You will be my shield," he chuckled. "That's a heavy title." She stepped closer, placing the glowing crystal in his hands. "It only works if you believe in yourself," she said. And as he held the core, the light did not burn him. It accepted him. Mason felt a strange warmth in his chest, like something ancient had chosen him without force, without pressure. Just trust. Outside, the guardian knelt once more, but this time, it lowered its hand, inviting them aboard. Valaya smiled faintly. "She's ready to move." Mason raised an eyebrow. She has a soul. Not like ours, but it's there." They stepped forward together. the girl who was no longer just a girl. And the human who had no reason to stay yet stayed anyway. The hunt was over, but the real journey had just begun. The giant guardian stood motionless in the clearing, its massive silver body gleaming under the strange, storm-filled sky. Its single blue eye slowly rotated and locked onto the two figures stepping forward. Valaya, now glowing with the energy of her ancestors. And Mason, a human with no royal blood, but a heart unlike any the machine had seen in centuries. The guardian lowered its hand, forming a glowing ramp of metal and light. Valaya didn't hesitate. She walked forward barefoot as if the machine was an old friend waiting for her return. Mason followed slowly, unsure. His boots echoed as they stepped inside the giant machine's chest. The inner walls shimmered alive, pulsing softly with light, not like metal, but like a living creature breathing through wires and circuits. As they entered, the ramp closed behind them, sealing the outside world away. Mason felt the air shift, thick, warm, heavy with energy. Valaya stepped to a circular platform in the center of the room. Her arms raised. "She's awake." Valaya whispered, "She's choosing." The room responded instantly. Dozens of thin beams of light scanned Valaya from head to toe. A low hum filled the chamber, like a chorus of voices speaking in unison. But only one word echoed clearly in Mason's ears: acceptable. Then a new beam turned to him. Mason flinched, not knowing what to expect. The light scanned him slowly, stopping at his heart. Unexpected. He took a step back. Wait, what does that mean? Valaya looked at him, surprised. The guardian is confused. "You're not of my blood, but you carry something stronger than code." Mason narrowed his eyes. "Like what?" She stepped down and touched his chest lightly. "Loyalty," she said softly, "and something else. Compassion. You didn't save me because of duty or power. You stayed because you cared, and that's something the old builders valued more." Then blood. Suddenly, the entire room changed. The walls retracted, revealing a massive view screen outside. The land spread for miles and across the ruined world. Points of light were flickering to life. Valaya gasped. The other machines. "They're waking because of this one." Mason asked. "No," she whispered. "Because of us, this machine didn't just accept me. It accepted you too. You're not just my protector anymore, Mason. You're part of the system now." Mason scratched the back of his neck. "I didn't sign up to be a machine pilot," he muttered. Valaya smiled. Too late. The guardian's voice echoed again. This time in both their minds, command protocol initiated. Dual interface established. And then the ship began to rise. The ancient star-forged guardian lifted off the ground with a grace that defied its size. From the outside, the air shimmered with energy. And for the first time in thousands of years, a starborn machine took flight under new command. Inside, Mason gripped a control ring that appeared before him. He didn't need instructions. The machine responded to his thoughts. His emotions, "Whoa," he said, as the ship spun gently through the air. Valaya stood beside him, arms crossed, eyes glowing. "We're not just flying," she said. "We're sending a signal to every corner of the galaxy." Mason frowned. "Is that a good thing?" Valaya's smile faded. "It depends who hears it first." Suddenly, an alert flashed across the glowing screen. "Unidentified ships approaching fast. They've found us already." Mason asked. "No." Valaya said grimly. "They were already looking for her, the machine. She remembers who destroyed the last Guardians." The screen zoomed in, revealing sleek, dark ships with sharp angles and no visible engines. They were silent, deadly, and heading straight for them. Valaya took a deep breath. "Then we fight." Mason turned to her. "Can this thing even fight?" As if answering him, dozens of weapon panels opened along the arms and shoulders of the Guardian, plasma cannons, energy shields. Rail turrets all fully powered. Valaya stepped forward, placing her hand on the control crystal. I was born with this power, but denied it all my life, she said. Now, I claim it not as a queen, but as a defender. The ships fired first, glowing red streaks tearing through the clouds, but the Guardian moved like a dancer spinning, dodging, returning fire with precision. Mason felt every movement in his bones. The machine didn't just follow orders, it felt like it trusted him. He was no longer just a human engineer. He was part of something legendary. And Valaya, she was no longer a lost girl from the ruins. She was light, fury, and destiny reborn. Together, they flew into the fire, not as strangers, but as the chosen. The sky burned with fire and thunder above the dead cities and cracked mountains. A battle unlike any in centuries had begun. The Guardian Valia's ancient machine cut through the air like a blade of light. Every pulse of its weapon shook the clouds. Every movement shook history itself. Mason stood inside the glowing cockpit, his hands on the control ring. He could feel everything's a hum of the machine, the shift of energy. Even the echo of Valia's breath beside him. They weren't flying the ship, they were one with it. Outside, enemy ships circled fast, black like shadows, quiet like whispers. They didn't speak, didn't warn, they just fired, again and again. But nothing touched the Guardian. Valaya stood tall beside Mason, her body glowing like starlight. Her voice was strong now, no longer weak or afraid. They were never after. Just me, she said, eyes locked on the approaching fleet. They were after what I carry inside. Mason turned to her. What is it, Valaya? What secret are you still hiding? She looked at him slowly, pain and truth in her eyes. My blood isn't just from the royal line, she said. It's the last remaining source of star code. A living code written into our DNA used to create, control, and even rewrite machines. Mason blinked. You're saying you don't just activate these machines, you could command every single one of them. Valaya nodded. Yes. But there's more. My ancestors locked that ability deep inside. It only unlocks when I connect my heart with someone who is willing to fight for me, not for power, not for control, but for me. Her voice cracked slightly. And you did that? Mason stepped closer. All I did was stop and listen to a girl crying in the dust. And that changed everything, she said. I'm no longer a key, Mason. Now I'm the door, and through me, we can rewrite everything that was broken. Suddenly, the Guardian's voice echoed in the chamber. Target locked. Incoming warship. A massive enemy ship broke through the clouds 10 times larger than the others, covered in black armor, humming with red energy. It wasn't here to capture Valaya. It was here to erase her. Valaya touched the console and whispered something in her language. The entire ship turned bright white. The symbols the walls glowed stronger, brighter, alive. Mason raised an eyebrow. What did you just say? I gave her permission, Valaya replied, to fight without limits. The Guardian screamed a sound like ancient music and thunder mixed together. It launched forward, its arms transforming into energy blades. It didn't just shoot anymore, it charged. The enemy warship responded with full firepower, missiles, beams, disruptors, everything. But nothing stopped the Guardian. It tore through metal like paper. Slicing clean through the center of the warship, a huge explosion followed bright. Massive, blinding. But the Guardian didn't fall. It rose from the fire like a phoenix, glowing. From within, inside the cockpit, Mason and Valaya stood in silence. It was over. The fleet was gone. The signal had been sent across space. Valaya breathed slowly. Tears slid down her cheeks. I thought I would die here, she whispered. Alone. Forgotten like the others, Mason placed a hand on her shoulder. You were never alone. Not anymore. She looked at him with soft eyes. You changed me, not my powers. Not the machines you. A single human with no army, no title, no bloodline. But you gave me something they couldn't. What's that? He asked gently. She smiled hope. Outside, the machine hovered quietly, and all across the stars. Other machines began to respond. Buried guardians, long-dormant relics, even forgotten satellites, all blinking to life, all recognizing a single truth. The last of the Starborn had returned. And she was not alone. Valaya and Mason stood side by side, the girl who had once fallen to her knees in the dust, and the man who had reached out his hand without knowing what she truly was. Their story had started with silence, but now it echoed across the galaxy. A message for every forgotten soul, every broken machine, every discarded life. Compassion is stronger than power. And sometimes, single hand offered in kindness can change the fate of stars.